Have you ever walked into a room that shouldn't exist, a room that's been sealed off, abandoned, yet somehow it's filled with people waiting just for you? Start the video with this chilling question, setting a foreboding tone that draws viewers into a terrifying reality that defies logic. Instantly, the mystery begins to unfold. This isn't just any story, it's a first-hand account of someone who dared to explore a forbidden place, only to find themselves face to face with the impossible. Set up the tension by briefly describing the protagonist, a medical student who was running late for a group activity in an underground hospital wing. But what started as a simple delay soon spiraled into an experience beyond nightmares. Emphasize that this story is a real-life account of horror, a tale where walls and doors seem to harbor secrets long forgotten, where reality and the supernatural blur, and where every viewer is about to step into a dark, twisted journey of suspense and dread. Then, with a voice laced with caution, invite the audience to brace themselves. Tonight, you'll join us on a journey into the depths of fear, into a forgotten wing of an abandoned hospital that still holds those who never left. Follow with a direct call to action. If you're ready to face the unknown, if you crave tales of terror that chill to the bone, hit the like button, subscribe to Sinister Stories, and share this story with others who are unafraid to look into the dark. And now, let us take you into a place where the walls whisper secrets and the shadows have memories. The introduction closes with a tantalizing hint, but remember, what she saw in that room cannot be unseen, and what you're about to hear cannot be forgotten. The camera fades to black, leaving only the viewer's anticipation of the horrors that are about to unfold. This setup promises a haunting narrative, ensuring that each person watching is both hooked and unnerved, ready to dive deeper into the terror of this abandoned medical wing that, despite being sealed for decades, still holds life, or something like it. As the protagonist makes her way to the underground wing, she steps into a world that feels as if time itself has abandoned it. The hallways are narrow, suffocatingly close, and lined with walls faded and cracked, bearing the marks of years of decay and disuse. The smell of damp and dust fills the air, thick and oppressive, clinging to her lungs with each hesitant breath. Flickering overhead lights cast a sickly yellow glow, barely illuminating the path forward and creating shadows that seem to move on their own, shifting in ways that make her question if she's truly alone. The silence is complete, deafening in its emptiness, broken only by the muffled echo of her footsteps on the cold, tiled floor. Every creak and distant drip of water sounds amplified, echoing down the endless, darkened corridor. As she moves deeper into the old wing, she passes by doorways leading into empty rooms, their doors slightly ajar as if beckoning her to step inside. Old, rusted beds are lined up in rows, remnants of a time when the place was full of life. But now, each bed appears almost like a casket, a silent reminder of the patients who may have once laid there, now long gone, or so she hopes. The walls themselves seem to breathe, expanding and contracting with an unnatural presence. Strange stains mar the cracked paint, dark patches that spread out like ghostly fingerprints. It's as if the very structure has absorbed something unholy, something that refuses to fade with time. A chill settles into her bones, a feeling that she's no longer walking through an empty hospital wing, but a place that harbors memories or spirits that were never laid to rest. Reaching a corner, she pauses, glancing over her shoulder, almost expecting to see someone or something watching her. The emptiness is suffocating, yet she can't shake the eerie sensation that eyes are following her every step. The shadows stretch and twist, creating fleeting shapes that disappear the moment she focuses on them. Her heart pounds louder with each step, as if her body is urging her to turn back, to escape whatever might lie ahead. Then she sees it, a door slightly ajar at the end of the corridor, where the faintest sliver of light spills out. It's out of place, unsettling in its brightness against the dim surroundings, as if it doesn't belong to this abandoned wing at all. Drawn by equal parts curiosity and dread, she steps closer, noticing that the room beyond seems unnaturally lit, almost sterile in its brightness. The smell of antiseptic wafts out, sharp and stinging, filling her nose with a scent that feels both recent and impossibly old. Her pulse quickens as she inches forward, feeling as if she's being drawn in by an invisible force. Something about that room doesn't belong here, yet she's compelled to look inside, even though every instinct tells her not to. Finally, she stands before the door, hand trembling as she pushes it open a fraction more, peeking into the room. What she sees makes her blood run cold. The room is large, almost too large to fit in the small confines of the underground wing. It's filled with figures dressed in white coats, their backs turned toward her, standing still, too still, as if they were frozen in time. Every one of them faces away, but there's something unnatural, something wrong about their silence and the rigid way they stand. A cold sweat drips down her forehead as she realizes these figures don't move, don't speak, don't breathe. They simply stand, as if awaiting something. She feels a sudden, overpowering urge to run, to turn and flee before they turn around and reveal whatever horrors lie behind those pale, expressionless faces. And yet, despite her terror, she can't tear her eyes away, gripped by a fear so intense it roots her to the spot, as if the room itself is holding her hostage. The tension mounts as she steps away from the unsettling room, her mind racing with what she's just seen, or thinks she's seen. It feels as if the walls themselves are closing in, amplifying her sense of unease with every heartbeat. She tries to shake off the encounter, chalking it up to exhaustion or nerves, but something deep inside tells her that what she saw was all too real. The silence around her has shifted, growing heavier, thicker, like an invisible weight pressing down on her chest. It's as if the entire wing is holding its breath, waiting, watching. The hallway stretches before her like an endless tunnel, the lights overhead flickering sporadically, casting strange, shifting shadows that play tricks on her mind. She tries to convince herself it's just her imagination, but then she hears it, a faint, rhythmic tapping echoing from somewhere further down the hall. The sound is barely audible at first, just a soft, irregular beat against the cold tile floor. But as she walks, it grows louder, unmistakable, each tap sending chills down her spine. It's a deliberate sound, one that feels disturbingly human, as if someone or something is following her, mirroring her every step. A cold breeze brushes past her face, carrying with it a faint, sickly smell, a mix of antiseptic and something rotten, something decayed. She looks around, trying to locate the source, but the hallway is empty, eerily still. Suddenly, the air turns icy, so cold that she can see her breath forming small clouds in front of her. The temperature drop is unnatural, abrupt, and she realizes she's not alone. There's a presence here, unseen but unmistakable, lurking just out of sight. She feels its gaze on her, like icy fingers trailing down her spine, a sensation that leaves her both paralyzed with fear and compelled to move forward. Then, without warning, she hears a voice, a whisper, faint and distorted, as if it's coming from just behind her. It's low, almost indiscernible, yet she can make out the words. "We're waiting." The voice is neither male nor female, but hollow, empty, as if spoken from a mouth that hasn't uttered a sound in years. Her heart races, and she whips around, expecting to find someone standing there, but the hallway is empty. The whisper lingers in the air, echoing off the walls, repeating again and again, "We're waiting, we're waiting." Her pulse thunders in her ears as she hurries down the hall, each step feeling heavier than the last, like she's wading through an unseen force trying to hold her back. Just when she thinks she's escaped the voice, she notices something out of the corner of her eye, a shadow that shouldn't be there, a dark figure standing at the very edge of her vision, unmoving, watching her. She freezes, her breath catching in her throat, but when she turns to face it directly, it's gone, replaced by only the empty corridor. The shadows around her seem to deepen, growing darker, thicker, as if they're alive, pulsating with an energy that feeds off her fear. The lights above dim even further, casting a weak, dying glow that does little to push back the encroaching darkness. The silence has transformed into a deafening hum, a low vibration that resonates through her bones, making her feel as though the entire building is breathing in sync with her rapid heartbeat. Then she hears another sound, soft at first but growing in intensity, the unmistakable creak of a door opening somewhere nearby. Her blood runs cold, and she feels her stomach drop as she realizes it's the door to the room she just left. She knows she closed it, heard the latch click, yet now it's opening on its own, an invitation or a warning. Unable to resist, she glances back, and for a fleeting moment, she sees them, the figures in white coats, standing just inside the doorway, their faces hidden in shadow, their bodies unnaturally still. One of them raises a hand, gesturing for her to return, their movements slow, deliberate, like something imitating a human gesture. Panic surges through her, her instincts screaming at her to run, but her legs feel rooted to the spot, as if the very floor beneath her is holding her captive. The figure's hand remains outstretched, beckoning her, and she hears that same hollow whisper. "We're waiting for you." The words echo in her mind, relentless, filling her with a dread that threatens to consume her entirely. She stumbles backward, heart pounding, feeling as if the walls themselves are closing in, narrowing the hallway, sealing her fate as the darkness and the whispers surround her. Her mind is in turmoil, every nerve screaming for her to leave this forsaken place, yet something stronger, a dark, twisted curiosity, pulls her back. She's torn between escaping the oppressive shadows that seem to close in around her and finding out what lies beyond them. The rational side of her mind urges her to leave, to forget this horrifying place, yet an inexplicable force whispers, daring her to uncover the secrets hidden in the depths of the abandoned wing. It's a pull she can't ignore, a call that seems to reach out from the darkened corridors, from those silent, waiting figures in white. She steadies her breathing, forcing herself to consider her options. Her fear is so intense it feels like a physical weight, pressing down on her shoulders and making every step feel labored. But with every pulse of fear, she feels an almost magnetic pull toward the unknown, a pull so powerful it nearly drowns out her terror. It's as though the shadows are whispering to her, filling her with an insidious desire to return to that room, to face the silent figures and demand answers. Why did they say they were waiting? Waiting for whom? And what could they possibly want from her? Summoning every ounce of courage she has, she forces herself to move forward, each step hesitant, heart pounding wildly. She tries to reassure herself that this is just an abandoned hospital wing, empty and devoid of life. And yet, deep down, she knows that's a lie. She senses that there's something here, something ancient, something beyond her understanding, lurking just beneath the surface. It's a presence so heavy, so malevolent, that she can feel it pressing against her skin, creeping into her thoughts like an infection. Her footsteps echo eerily down the corridor, each sound amplifying her dread. As she nears the room once more, the air grows colder, thick with a sense of foreboding that clings to her like a shroud. Her hands are trembling, her mouth dry, but she pushes onward, feeling as though she's walking into a trap. When she reaches the door, she pauses, heart hammering in her chest as she recalls the figures in white coats, their backs turned, waiting, watching. The memory of their outstretched hands, the hollow whisper, fills her with dread so intense that she almost turns back. But it's too late. She's already in too deep, ensnared by the dark mystery that has wrapped itself around her, pulling her down. With a shaky hand, she reaches for the doorknob, the cold metal sending a jolt through her fingertips. She hesitates, feeling as if all the horrors of this place are gathering on the other side, waiting for her to make her choice. The door looms before her like a gateway, an entrance into a reality twisted by shadows and fear, a place where sanity holds no power. She takes a deep breath, her fingers closing around the doorknob. But just as she begins to turn it, she hears something from within the room, a faint, raspy breathing, as if multiple voices are drawing breath in unison. The sound sends a shock of terror through her, her skin crawling as she realizes that whatever is inside is alive, in some terrible, unnatural way. She pulls her hand back, instinct screaming for her to run, yet the curiosity persists, clawing at her mind with a relentless grip. In that agonizing moment of indecision, she realizes she's not just afraid of what's in the room. She's afraid of leaving without knowing, of letting the secrets of this place haunt her forever. The weight of her choice bears down on her, a brutal tug-of-war between fear and curiosity, each one gnawing at her sanity. Taking one last breath, she makes her decision. She tightens her grip on the doorknob, preparing herself to confront whatever is lurking within. As the door begins to creak open, she feels a wave of darkness pour out from the room, wrapping around her like icy tendrils, pulling her in. It's as if the shadows themselves are alive, reaching out to claim her, binding her to the place, forcing her to witness the horrors waiting inside. She closes her eyes, knowing that the moment she steps through that doorway, there's no turning back. She's about to face something beyond the realm of understanding, something that has been waiting for her, watching her, all along. As she steps into the room, the air grows dense and icy, as though it's alive with an unseen presence, pressing down on her shoulders, making her breath shallow and ragged. The walls seem to close in, vibrating with an energy that feels ancient, predatory. In front of her, the figures in white coats stand motionless, their backs to her, casting unnatural shadows that twist and shift across the floor as though they have a life of their own. She feels like an intruder, a trespasser in a place that exists between life and death, and she senses that whatever is here knows it. Her skin prickles as one of the figures begins to turn, slowly, deliberately, like something long forgotten stirring from the depths of darkness. Her heart races, pounding so hard she fears it might stop altogether. When the figure finally faces her, its eyes are hollow, voids of darkness that seem to stretch endlessly, pulling her into an abyss of nothingness. The face is pale, unnaturally stretched, as if something else is wearing human skin as a mask. A smile slowly spreads across its face, unnatural and wide, stretching beyond the limits of human anatomy, revealing rows of teeth that are too sharp, too many. The figure raises a bony hand, fingers elongated and claw-like, and points directly at her, as though marking her as prey. A faint whisper fills the air, not from the figure itself, but from all around her, echoing from the walls, the floor, even the shadows themselves. "We've been waiting for you," the voices chant in eerie unison, a chorus of hollow, soulless tones that wrap around her, filling her mind, crowding out her own thoughts. The whispers grow louder, overlapping, until they become a cacophony of voices, each one dripping with malice, each one speaking to her as if they know every secret, every fear she's ever had. Paralyzed by fear, she watches helplessly as the other figures slowly begin to turn as well, their heads jerking and twisting at unnatural angles, their hollow eyes locking onto her. The room itself seems to warp and shift, the walls bending inward, the ceiling lowering, as if the space is closing in, trapping her within its twisted embrace. She realizes, with chilling clarity, that this is not just a room. It's a prison, a cage built to contain the horrors that now stand before her. Suddenly, one of the figures steps forward, its movements slow and mechanical, yet filled with a sinister purpose. Each step it takes sends a tremor through the floor, an echoing thud that matches the frantic rhythm of her heartbeat. She tries to back away, but her legs refuse to move, as though the air itself has turned to cement, locking her in place. The figure reaches out, its skeletal fingers extending towards her, and she can feel the chill radiating from its hand, a cold so intense it feels like it's sinking into her bones, freezing her from the inside out. Just as the figure's fingers graze her arm, she feels a surge of terror, so profound it snaps her from her paralysis. She stumbles back, nearly tripping over her own feet, her hand reaching for the door in a desperate bid to escape. But as she glances back, she sees the doorway has disappeared, replaced by a solid wall. Panic floods her as she realizes she's trapped, sealed inside this room with the figures who now close in on her, their empty eyes filled with a hunger she can't comprehend. One by one, they encircle her, each face twisted in a grotesque semblance of humanity, each pair of eyes locked onto her with an intensity that makes her skin crawl. Their voices begin to merge, forming a single, droning hum that resonates through her entire body, filling her with a dread so deep it feels like it might consume her. She can barely breathe, the air thick with the stench of decay, the scent of something that has lingered in darkness for far too long. Desperate, she tries to scream, but no sound escapes her lips. The figures close in, their hands reaching out, brushing against her skin, sending waves of icy terror through her. She feels as if they're draining her, pulling something vital from her soul, leaving her hollow, empty just like them. She's slipping, fading, her vision blurring, as the room dissolves into shadows, the figures merging with the darkness, becoming one with it, as if they were never there to begin with. In her final moments of consciousness, she hears that same whisper, now softer, more intimate, like a lover's murmur in her ear. "You belong to us now. You'll never leave." And as her world fades to black, she realizes with a soul-crushing certainty that she has become part of the room's twisted, eternal nightmare. One more figure, waiting in silence, for the next unfortunate soul who dares to step through that door. In the suffocating darkness, her consciousness flickers like a candle struggling against a strong wind. She feels herself drifting, lost in a void, weightless and numb, yet aware of 1,000 whispering voices surrounding her. Just when she thinks she's succumbed entirely to the darkness, a faint light appears, distant and ghostly. Her mind claws its way toward it, desperate for an escape from the suffocating blackness. As the light grows, it reveals shapes, figures looming in the shadows, faces twisted in agony, all staring at her with hollow, desperate eyes. And then, suddenly, it all becomes painfully clear. These figures, these apparitions, are the souls of the lost, trapped here for eternity, doctors, patients, even children, all who had once walked these halls and never left. She sees glimpses of their past lives, fragments of memories burned into the ether of the room. A doctor frantically scrubbing his hands, blood dripping from his white coat. A nurse holding a patient's hand as they took their final breath. A child, her face pale and sickly, clutching a worn-out doll as she fades into darkness. The scenes unfold in flashes, each one more disturbing than the last, filling her with a sense of overwhelming dread as she realizes she's witnessing the history of this place. The echoes of lives extinguished too soon, each one bound to the hospital's cursed walls. The whispers around her grow louder, the fragmented memories melding into a single, chilling voice that reverberates through her mind. You are one of us now. She feels a tug at her soul, an insistent pull trying to draw her deeper, binding her to this place, anchoring her in the cold emptiness. Terror surges through her as she fights against it, clinging to the last fragments of her fading self. She realizes that if she doesn't escape now, she'll become just like them, a forgotten soul trapped in eternal darkness, bound to wander these forsaken halls forever. In a desperate attempt to break free, she forces her eyes open, gasping as she finds herself back in the room, surrounded once more by the silent figures in white. But something is different. They're no longer just staring at her. Their eyes, now filled with a knowing, almost human sorrow, seem to be pleading with her. One of them steps forward, lifting a skeletal hand to point at a plaque on the wall. She follows the direction of the pointing finger, her eyes landing on words carved into the tarnished metal. Those who seek must find. A sudden, terrifying understanding dawns on her. This is not just an abandoned hospital wing. It's a purgatory, a trap for those who stumble upon it. The spirits here are the restless dead, trapped in an endless loop, forever waiting for someone to release them, for someone to find the truth and free them from their silent torment. And now, by entering their domain, she has bound herself to their fate. The revelation is soul-crushing, as she realizes that she alone has the power to break the cycle, but at an unimaginable cost. The figure's hollow eyes seem to plead with her, urging her to fulfill her role. She knows that if she stays, if she willingly accepts her place among them, they will be freed, their souls released from the chains binding them to this forsaken place. But if she chooses to leave, to break free, she will condemn them to remain here, trapped in the shadows, their souls forever bound to the cold, dark rooms of the hospital. In that moment, she understands the price of the truth she has uncovered. She feels a horrible tug-of-war in her soul, an unbearable conflict between her survival instinct and the haunting sorrow of these trapped spirits. They are so close, their faces a mix of hope and despair, as if reaching out to her for one last chance at peace. Her mind races as she faces the ultimate choice: sacrifice herself to end their torment or escape, knowing that her life will come at the cost of their eternal suffering. A tear rolls down her cheek as she whispers her decision aloud. Instantly, the room grows colder, the shadows pulling tighter around her, as if acknowledging her choice. The spirits' faces begin to soften, their tortured expressions easing, their eyes closing one by one as they fade, their figures melting into the darkness like wisps of smoke. She feels a weight lift from the room, a profound stillness settling over her, and in that silence, a final whisper echoes in her mind: "Thank you." As the last spirit fades, she feels her own strength drain away, her vision dimming as darkness creeps in from the edges. She's losing herself, becoming one with the shadows, her own soul now entwined with the room's ancient secrets. The finality of it hits her, the full weight of her sacrifice, but there is also a strange peace, a release from fear, as if she has found a twisted kind of redemption. In her last moments, she catches a glimpse of her own reflection in the glass of a nearby cabinet. Her face is pale, her eyes empty and hollow, already beginning to take on the same spectral quality as the others. The last flicker of her humanity fades, and she understands, with chilling clarity, that she has taken her place among them, the newest soul bound to this haunted wing. Now she waits, a silent guardian among the spirits, for the next unsuspecting visitor who dares to open the door and step into the darkness. As the days turn to weeks, rumors spread like wildfire around campus about the student who never returned from the old hospital wing. Her friends and professors, unable to make sense of her sudden disappearance, speculate wildly. Some say she ran away, others believe she got lost in the labyrinthine hallways beneath the hospital, and a few whisper that she ventured somewhere forbidden, into a place that no longer belongs to the world of the living. But there's one friend, someone close to her, who can't let go. Driven by guilt and desperation, he decides to investigate on his own, convinced that she wouldn't have simply left without a trace. Armed with only a flashlight and a sinking feeling of dread, he enters the abandoned hospital late one night, stepping into the dark corridors with a resolve he can feel slipping away with each step. The air is thick, heavy with an oppressive silence, and he can't shake the feeling that something, or someone, is watching him. As he walks deeper into the hospital wing, the silence around him intensifies, growing louder in a way that makes his heart pound. He finally reaches the door to the room where she was last seen, feeling the cold metal handle under his hand. With a deep breath, he pushes it open and steps inside, his flashlight casting trembling beams of light across the empty room. But as he shines the light on the walls, he notices something strange. Scrawled faintly in the dust are words written in what appears to be her handwriting. "I'm here." A chill runs down his spine as he realizes the implication. The words look fresh, as if they were left for him to find, a desperate message reaching out from somewhere beyond. He backs away, the hairs on his neck prickling with the unmistakable feeling of a presence in the room. But as he turns to leave, his flashlight flickers, casting the room in complete darkness. Panic sets in, and he frantically shakes the flashlight until the beam steadies again. When the light returns, he catches a glimpse of something that makes his blood run cold. There, standing in the corner of the room, is a shadowy figure. Her face is pale, her eyes hollow, filled with an unfathomable sadness. It's her, his friend, but changed, no longer human, but something else, something bound to this place. She stands silently, her mouth slightly open, as if trying to speak, to convey something she can no longer voice. Her gaze is fixed on him, pleading, desperate, as if she's caught between worlds, unable to move on, yet yearning for freedom. His heart pounds as he stares at her, frozen in place by a terror so profound it roots him to the spot. The air grows colder, and he feels a sudden weight pressing down on him, as if the room itself is alive, hungry for another soul. He steps back, inching toward the door, but his friend raises her hand, gesturing for him to stop. Her lips move soundlessly, and though no words reach his ears, he can feel her plea reverberate through him, a desperate warning not to follow her path, not to make the same fatal mistake. The flashlight flickers again, and in the momentary darkness, he feels something brush past him, a whisper of cold air that chills him to the core. When the light returns, she's gone, vanished as if she were nothing more than a shadow, a memory etched into the walls of this forsaken place. But he can still feel her presence, lingering, watching, forever bound to the hospital wing she dared to explore. In that moment, he understands. She's become part of the hospital now, just another lost soul, trapped in an eternal loop, haunting the corridors, warning others who might venture too far. The realization fills him with a cold dread, and he stumbles out of the room, running down the hallway as the walls seem to close in, shadows stretching and shifting, as though reaching out to pull him back. He finally bursts into the night air, gasping, as the darkness of the hospital falls silent once more. Yet even as he escapes, he knows that he can never truly leave her behind. Her hollow eyes and pleading gaze haunt his thoughts, her final message etched into his memory, "I'm here." And deep down, he realizes that she will remain there, bound to the shadows, forever waiting for someone to release her from the nightmare. But perhaps the most chilling thought of all is that one day, someone else will hear the whispers from that forsaken room, feel the cold hand of curiosity, and be lured into the same trap. For those who enter the abandoned hospital wing don't simply vanish. They become part of its haunting, drawn into an eternal prison of shadows, a place where souls linger, forever reaching out, forever waiting, for the next unfortunate soul to answer the call. Weeks pass, but the memories cling to him like shadows he can't shake. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees her face, pale, hollow-eyed, caught in that tragic state between life and death, her spirit bound to the hospital's cold, desolate halls. Her silent plea echoes in his mind, haunting him as if she's still reaching out, begging to be freed from the prison that claimed her. He tries to resume his life, but normalcy feels like an illusion, a facade that shatters the moment he's alone with his thoughts. The world around him seems different now, darker somehow, as though he's carrying a piece of that cursed hospital inside him. He becomes withdrawn, obsessed with the mystery of the abandoned wing, desperate to understand the forces that ensnared her. He scours through old records, urban legends, anything that might explain why that part of the hospital is shunned, and why it continues to hold those who enter. He learns of others who disappeared within those walls, people whose names were lost to time, souls who became whispers in the shadows. His obsession deepens, and he begins to see her reflection in mirrors, fleeting glimpses of her in crowded rooms, like a silent specter haunting his every step. His friends grow concerned, urging him to let it go, to forget the past and move on. But he knows that moving on isn't possible. He feels her presence constantly, a chilling reminder of the fate she met, a fate that could have been his. Every night, he's plagued by nightmares, vivid and twisted, where he's back in the hospital, wandering those endless halls, the walls pressing in on him, the shadows reaching out like hungry fingers. And at the end of every dream, he finds her, standing alone in the darkness, her hand outstretched, her hollow eyes pleading, as if she's silently calling him to join her. The dreams grow stronger, more frequent, bleeding into his waking hours until he can no longer tell where reality ends and the nightmare begins. He feels himself slipping, as if he's being drawn back to that place, his mind tethered to the shadows he barely escaped. The whispers from his nightmares begin to follow him, soft voices murmuring his name, filling him with the same cold dread he felt in the hospital. It's as if the hospital itself is alive, reaching out through the void to pull him back, as if he too is bound to it, forever marked by his encounter. One night, unable to bear the weight of her memory, he returns to the campus, to the abandoned wing that haunts his dreams. He stands outside the old hospital, the building looming in the moonlight, its windows dark and empty, like hollow eyes watching him. His heart races, every instinct screaming for him to leave, to escape while he still can. But he feels a strange compulsion, a pull he can't resist, like a hand reaching from the darkness, drawing him back toward the place that changed him. As he stands in the shadow of the hospital, he whispers her name, hoping for some sign, some indication that she's still there, listening. For a moment, there's only silence, a stillness that feels like the calm before a storm. But then, from deep within the hospital's depths, he hears it, a faint whisper, soft and chilling, drifting through the cold night air. "I'm here." The words send a shiver down his spine, confirming what he's feared all along. She's still there, waiting, forever bound to that forsaken place. He steps back, heart pounding, as he realizes the depth of her suffering, the eternity of silence and shadows she's condemned to. And as he walks away, a thought gnaws at the edge of his mind. Perhaps her fate is his, too. Perhaps the hospital never truly lets go of anyone who's seen what lies within its walls. He wonders if, someday, he'll be the one standing in those haunted corridors, his soul trapped, a silent figure waiting in the darkness, another spirit bound to the cursed hospital. In a final reflection, he warns others to avoid the old hospital wing, to ignore the curiosity that lures people to its doors, for it holds not just memories, but souls, souls lost to time, waiting, watching, reaching out to claim the living. And though he's escaped for now, he knows the shadows will always follow him. Their whispers a reminder that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. The terror of that night, the haunted memory of her face, will linger with him forever, a dark shadow over his life, whispering a chilling reminder that he was marked by the darkness, and that one day it may come to claim him as well.